The soft chime of the station's daily cycle echoed through Harmony Station as Jung Kim adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform. Today marked the 5th annual Interstellar Cultural Festival, an event designed to strengthen bonds between the 17 species that called the massive space station home. Just remember to smile and accept anything they give you, Director Park had instructed during yesterday's briefing. The Luminians place extraordinary value on gift exchanges. Refuse nothing. June nodded at his reflection in the mirror. At 32, he was the youngest human diplomat on Harmony, a position he'd earned through years of dedicated service and a natural talent for understanding alien cultures. Still, the Luminians remained something of a mystery. Their crystalline bodies and light-based communication made them fascinating but difficult to read. The festival hall bustled with activity when June arrived. Creatures of all shapes and sizes mingled beneath shimmering decorations that hung from the high ceiling. Some species he recognized immediately: the towering crawl with their 4 arms, the aquatic Melosians in their hovering water tanks. Others were less familiar. "Diplomat Kim," a melodic voice called. June turned to see Ambassador Chen approaching with a Luminian in tow. Even by their species standards, this Luminian was striking. Her crystalline form captured the hall's lights and refracted them in dazzling patterns. Unlike most Luminians who glowed blue or white, her core pulsed with a rare pink luminescence. "May I introduce Royal Diplomat Hannah of House Luminar," Chen said formally. "She specifically requested to meet you." June bowed respectfully. "The honor is mine, Royal Diplomat." The Luminian's form flickered in what June had learned was their equivalent of a smile. "Please, call me Hannah," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality all Luminians possessed. "I have followed your work on the Kral peace treaties. Most impressive for one so new to galactic diplomacy." "You're too kind," June replied, surprised she knew of his minor role in those negotiations. "I believe in recognizing potential," Hannah said. Her crystalline fingers touched something at her side, a small pouch that seemed to be made of solidified light. "The festival is a time for cultural exchange, is it not?" Before June could respond, Hannah reached into the pouch and withdrew an object that made several nearby attendees gasp. It was a crystal unlike any June had seen before, multifaceted and shifting between colors, seemingly alive with internal light. It fit in her palm, but commanded the attention of everyone nearby. "This is a Luminar Heartstone," Hannah explained, her voice suddenly shy, her pink glow intensifying. "It is significant to my people." June noticed Ambassador Chen's eyes widen. The older diplomat opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, watching the scene unfold with an unreadable expression. Following protocol, June extended both hands. "I am deeply honored by such a beautiful gift." When Hannah placed the crystal in his palms, a warm sensation spread up his arms. The crystal's light pulsed once, strongly, matching his heartbeat. "It responds to you," Hannah said softly. "That is very good." Several Luminians who had gathered to watch the exchange made chiming sounds June's translator didn't catch. He noticed some of them touching their own cores in what looked like surprise or respect. "I'm afraid my gift pales in comparison," June said, suddenly self-conscious about the small earth artifact he'd brought. A handcrafted music box that played a traditional Korean melody. Hannah accepted his gift with what seemed like excessive reverence. When she opened it, and the gentle notes filled the air, her entire form glowed brighter. "Music that exists in physical form," she said wonderingly. "Your people create beauty in such unexpected ways." The exchange complete, they were soon separated by the flow of the festival. June carefully placed the crystal in his secure diplomatic pouch, making a mental note to find a proper display for such an obviously important artifact. Later, as the festival wound down, Director Park approached June with an odd expression. "I see you met Royal Diplomat Hannah," she said carefully. "Yes, she was quite generous with her gift," June replied. "Do you know anything about these heartstones? It seems significant." "So what happens now?" June asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The station's legal attaché, a stern woman named Officer Min, spoke up. Technically, you're in a binding premarital agreement by Luminian law. The final ceremony hasn't occurred yet, but you're publicly recognized as Hannah's chosen consort. June ran his hands through his hair. Can't I just give it back? Explain the misunderstanding. The room fell silent. Ambassador Chen and Director Park exchanged uncomfortable glances. That's where things get complicated, Director Park said finally. Hannah isn't just any Luminian diplomat. She's third in line to the Luminian High Radiance. She's royalty. June felt the blood drain from his face. Very much so, Ambassador Chen confirmed. The daughter of the ruling triumvirate. This isn't just a personal matter. It's a high-level diplomatic situation now. Officer Min pulled up a holographic display showing various treaty documents. The Luminians control access to 3 key wormholes in this sector and supply nearly 40% of the rare crystals used in our faster-than-light drives. Earth has been trying to establish stronger ties with them for decades. June understood the implication immediately. So if I reject the proposal, I could damage Earth's relationship with the Luminians. It would be seen as a profound insult, Ambassador Chen said. Not just to Hannah, but to their entire ruling family. The kind of insult that historically has led to trade embargoes or worse. Director Park leaned forward. The Alliance Council has already contacted Earth's diplomatic corps about this. They see potential advantages in having a human married into the Luminian royal family. So Earth wants me to go through with this? June asked incredulously. They want you to handle it delicately. Director Park replied carefully. The official position is that this is your personal decision, but they've made it clear that finding a solution that maintains positive relations is strongly preferred. June stood up and paced the small office. This is insane. I don't even know her. We're different species. Interspecies marriages aren't unheard of on Harmony, Officer Min noted. There are 16 registered human-alien couples currently on station, including 2 with crystalline species. But those people chose to get married. June protested. They didn't accidentally sign a marriage contract because they accepted a gift. A gentle chime interrupted the conversation. The office door slid open to reveal a tall, elegantly dressed human woman whom June recognized as Dr. Yuna Lee, the station's chief xenanthropologist. Sorry I'm late, she said, nodding to the others. I was reviewing the Luminian bonding protocols. She turned to June with a sympathetic smile. You've found yourself in quite a situation, Diplomat Kim. Director Park gestured for Dr. Lee to sit. Dr. Lee is our foremost expert on Luminian culture. She may be able to offer some insight. June looked at the anthropologist hopefully. Is there any way out of this that doesn't cause an interstellar incident? Dr. Lee placed a data crystal on the table, and a holographic display appeared showing complex Luminian text and symbols. The Luminians don't have a concept of accidental bonding, she explained. In their culture, intent is determined by action, not by internal mental state. By accepting and displaying the Heartstone, you perform the actions of someone who intends to bond. But I didn't know, June insisted. I understand, Dr. Lee said gently. But from their perspective, either you knew and meant it, or you accepted something without understanding its significance, which would suggest carelessness in a diplomat. June winced. Neither option made him look good. There is something else you should know, Dr. Lee continued. Hannah's choice is quite extraordinary. Luminians of royal lineage typically bond only with other Luminians. For her to offer a Heartstone to a human is unprecedented. What does that mean? June asked. It means she specifically chose you, Dr. Lee replied. Heartstones aren't generic gifts. They're created by the Luminian for their intended partner, formed from part of their own crystalline structure. It's literally a piece of herself she's given you. June recalled how the crystal had pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The memory sent a strange shiver down his spine. There's one more complication, Ambassador Chen said reluctantly. News of the bonding has already spread throughout the station. Several media outlets are requesting interviews with the human who captured a Luminian princess's heart. Director Park showed June her tablet, which displayed headlines from various station news feeds. June put his head in his hands. This is a nightmare. Actually, Dr. Lee said thoughtfully, this might provide an opportunity. The public nature of the situation creates diplomatic pressure, but it also gives you room to negotiate. June looked up. What do you mean? Luminians value harmony and mutual understanding above all. If you approach Hannah directly and explain the cultural misunderstanding, she might be willing to find a solution that saves face for both sides. So I should talk to her? June asked. It would be better than avoiding her, which would be seen as rejection, Dr. Lee advised. But first, you need to understand exactly what you're getting into. For the next hour, Dr. Lee explained the intricacies of Luminian bonding traditions. June learned that the full bonding ceremony involved 7 stages spanning several months. He had completed only the preliminary stage by accepting the Heartstone. The next stage would be the light sharing, Dr. Lee explained. It's a private ceremony where you and Hannah would exchange personal histories and intentions. That actually sounds reasonable, June admitted. It's also your best opportunity to discuss the misunderstanding, Dr. Lee suggested. Luminians value truth, especially during the light sharing. It's considered a sacred time when deception is impossible. As the meeting concluded, Director Park pulled June aside. The station admiral wants daily updates on this situation. Whatever you decide, tread carefully. This could either be a diplomatic disaster or the beginning of a stronger alliance between our species. June nodded numbly. I'll talk to Hannah tomorrow. One more thing, Director Park added. Until this is resolved, you've been temporarily relieved of your other diplomatic duties. This situation is now your primary assignment. Later that evening, June sat alone in his quarters, staring at the Heartstone. In the darkness, it glowed with a soft, pulsing light that somehow felt alive. He reached out to touch it, and the crystal immediately brightened, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the walls. What have I gotten myself into? He whispered. His door chimed, indicating a visitor. When June opened it, he found a small, hovering delivery drone holding an elegant box. Delivery for Consort Kim, the automated voice announced. Annada, June began, then sighed. Thank you. Inside the box, he found a beautifully crafted garment made of a material that seemed to shift between solid cloth and pure light. A small note accompanied it. For our light sharing tomorrow, I look forward to beginning our journey together. Hannah. June carefully placed the garment on his bed, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Tomorrow, he would have to face a Luminian princess and somehow explain that he had accidentally agreed to marry her without causing an interstellar diplomatic crisis. As he prepared for bed, his communication panel chimed with a priority message from Earth's diplomatic corps. Congratulations on your engagement, Diplomat Kim. Your unique position presents an unprecedented opportunity for human-Luminian relations. We trust you will handle this situation with the utmost diplomatic skill. A full briefing on strategic considerations will follow. June stared at the message for a long moment before shutting off the panel. It seemed that everyone had plans for his accidental engagement. Everyone except him. The Luminian royal quarters shimmered with an otherworldly glow as June approached. 2 crystalline guards stood at attention, their forms pulsing with blue light. They bowed slightly when they saw him, a gesture that still felt strange. Consort Kim, one guard chimed. Her radiance awaits you within. June tugged nervously at the light cloth garment Hannah had sent. The material adjusted to his movements, somehow both solid and flowing at once. Thank you, he said, trying to sound confident despite his racing heart. The doors dissolved into particles of light, revealing a chamber unlike anything June had seen before. The walls seemed made of living crystal that hummed with gentle energy. The floor was a smooth surface that rippled slightly with each step, like walking on the surface of calm water. In the center of the room, a circular platform glowed softly. Hannah floated near a window that offered a breathtaking view of the spiral galaxy beyond the station. Her crystalline form shimmered with pink and gold light. When she turned toward him, June was struck by how her light patterns shifted, almost like expressions on a human face. "June," she said, her voice like wind chimes, "you honor me by wearing the ceremonial sharing cloth." June swallowed hard. "Hannah, I need to talk to you about something important." She glided closer, her light dimming slightly. "You seem troubled. Is this not a happy time for you?" "I think there's been a misunderstanding," June said carefully. "On Earth, when someone gives you a gift, it's just a gift. I didn't understand what the Heartstone meant." Hannah went completely still, her light patterns freezing in place. "You did not know you were accepting a bonding proposal." "No," June admitted. "I'm sorry, but in human culture, we usually discuss marriage before agreeing to it." For a moment, Hannah's glow dimmed so dramatically that June feared she might shatter from distress. Then, unexpectedly, her form rippled with what his translator identified as Luminian laughter. "Oh, now I understand why the ambassador looked so shocked," she said, brightening again. "I thought he was merely surprised by my choice of a human partner." June blinked in confusion. "You're not upset?" "I am embarrassed," Hannah admitted, her color shifting to a deeper pink. "I study human customs extensively, but I missed this crucial difference." She moved closer. "But I am not upset. The misunderstanding is mine." Relief washed over June. "So we can undo this. Explain it was all a mistake." Hannah's light dimmed slightly. "It is not so simple. The bonding has been announced publicly. My family has acknowledged you. To withdraw now would create complications. Diplomatic ones," June said, nodding. "That's what my superiors said too." "More than diplomatic," Hannah explained. "For Luminians, the Heartstone is sacred. Once offered and accepted, it forms a connection that is not easily broken." She floated to a crystalline cabinet and retrieved a small device. When activated, it projected a holographic display of Luminian text and diagrams. "May I explain how Luminians choose bonding partners? It might help you understand." June nodded, curious despite his anxiety. "Unlike humans who often bond based on romantic love, Luminians seek compatible energy signatures, what we call light resonance. When I first met you at the diplomatic summit 3 months ago, I noticed your bioelectrical field harmonized with my light patterns in a rare and beautiful way." "3 months ago?" June asked, surprised. "But we barely spoke." "For Luminians, speech is secondary. I observed your energy, your interactions with others, your diplomatic skills. I researched your work. I found someone whose light complemented mine." She paused. "I chose you with great deliberation, June." The revelation stunned him. While he'd been completely unaware, Hannah had been carefully evaluating him as a potential life partner. "I don't know what to say," June admitted. "Say you will participate in today's light sharing," Hannah suggested. "It commits you to nothing final, but it will allow us to truly know one another. After that, we can decide how to proceed." June considered his options. Refusing would cause an immediate diplomatic incident. Participating would buy time while honoring Luminian customs. "All right," he agreed. "What does the light sharing involve?" Hannah brightened visibly. "We sit together on the resonance platform. I share my light with you, and you share your thoughts with me. It creates understanding between different beings." She guided him to the circular platform in the center of the room. As they sat facing each other, the platform began to glow more intensely. "Usually, this is a private ceremony," Hannah explained. "But given the unusual circumstances, I have asked Dijin, our cultural interpreter, to assist." A smaller Luminian that June hadn't noticed stepped forward from an alcove. "I will guide you through the process," Dijin said, "and ensure nothing is lost in translation. Dae-jin instructed June to place his hands palms up on the platform. Hana positioned her crystalline appendages above his hands, not quite touching. Close your eyes, Dae-jin instructed. Breathe deeply and clear your mind. June did as instructed, feeling slightly foolish until a warm sensation began to flow up his arms. Behind his closed eyelids, patterns of light appeared, swirling and taking shape. Hana is sharing her essence with you, Dae-jin explained softly. The images you see are her memories, her thoughts, herself. The light patterns formed into scenes that played like a movie in June's mind. He saw Hana as a young Lumenian, studying in vast crystal libraries. He felt her dedication to diplomacy, her belief in peaceful cooperation between species. He experienced her loneliness as a royal who was always kept slightly apart from others. Most surprisingly, he saw himself through her eyes, a human whose energy seemed to dance in patterns that complemented her own, whose diplomatic work showed a genuine desire to understand others rather than merely advance his own species' interests. Now think of your own life, Dae-jin instructed. Your hopes, your work, your truth. Don't try to hide anything. The light sharing reveals all. Feeling vulnerable but strangely trusting, Jun thought about his childhood in Seoul, his years of study, his dream of helping build a peaceful galactic community. He acknowledged his ambition, his occasional doubts, his fear of the current situation. The light between them pulsed and swirled, creating patterns that somehow represented the merging of their experiences. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. June lost track of how long they sat there, connected in this strange, intimate way. When Dae-jin finally spoke again, Jun felt as if he'd been in a trance. The sharing is complete, the interpreter announced. You may open your eyes. Jun blinked, adjusting to the room's light. Before him, Hana glowed with a brilliant radiance he hadn't seen before. Somehow, she looked different to him now, not just a crystalline alien form, but a person with hopes, fears, and a unique perspective that he could now understand. That was, Jun struggled to find words. Yes, Hana agreed, seeming to understand his meaning without explanation. It is rare for a human and Lumenian to achieve such clear sharing on a first attempt. Dae-jin made a chiming sound of surprise. The resonance readings are exceptional. Your energies aligned in perfect harmony. June stared at Hana, suddenly seeing beyond her alien appearance. The light patterns that rippled through her crystalline form now seemed like expressions he could almost read. Curiosity, hope, and something like affection. I should go, Jun said, feeling overwhelmed. I need to think about all this. Hana's light dimmed slightly. Of course, the light sharing can be intense for those experiencing it the first time. As June stood to leave, he found himself asking, would it be possible to meet again tomorrow? I'd like to learn more about Lumenian customs. Hana brightened immediately. I would be honored. Perhaps we could visit the Crystal Gardens. It is a place of beauty for both our species. I'd like that, Jun replied, surprised to realize he meant it. Later, as he walked back to his quarters, Jun found himself thinking about Hana differently. The alien princess was becoming a person to him, complex, thoughtful, and surprisingly compatible with his own worldview. The diplomatic crisis still loomed, but now it felt less like a problem to solve and more like a puzzle with multiple possible solutions. In his quarters, the heartstone pulsed with a gentle rhythm that now seemed synchronized with his heartbeat. June no longer felt the urge to hide it away. Instead, he found himself wondering what other Lumenian customs he might come to appreciate, given time and understanding. His communication panel lit up with a message from Director Park. Status update required. How did the meeting go? June stared at the message for a long moment before typing his reply. Meeting went well. Cultural misunderstanding confirmed but situation complex. Participating in preliminary ceremonies while exploring options. Will submit full report tomorrow. He hesitated before adding, the Lumenians are more compatible with humans than we realized. June stared at the message displayed on his tablet with growing unease. It had arrived marked Priority Alpha from Earth's diplomatic corps. They don't understand, Do-hyun said desperately. If they remove the spear before the healing is complete, the clouding could return. It might not just affect us. It could spread to other crystal-based systems. Ju-woo looked from the confrontation to the ancient spear, still glowing faintly as it had for thousands of years. She thought about the Forerunners, who looked so much like humans, and their sacrifice to save a species not their own. We have to stop this, she said. We have to tell them the truth. But as they moved toward the confrontation, the first shots were fired. Energy weapons designed to disable Vaxian crystal structures without destroying them. The Elders' defensive shields shimmered as they absorbed the attack. The battle for the sacred stone had begun, and with it, the potential destruction of everything the Forerunners had died to preserve. The morning sky filled with Confederation ships, their engines humming ominously over the sacred grounds. After the first skirmish, both sides had retreated to regroup. The Vaxian Elders formed a defensive circle around the sacred stone, while Confederation forces established a perimeter. Ambassador Taeho addressed the gathered representatives through amplified channels. The Vaxians have one final chance to cooperate. Their deception threatens galactic harmony. The spear clearly contains technology beneficial to all species. Elder Hyun stood unmoved, his ancient crystal form pulsing with resolute colors. The spear cannot be removed without understanding its purpose. Your actions risk destroying what you seek to possess. Ju-woo and Do-hyun watched from behind a crystal column, having spent the night piecing together the final fragments of the ancient record. We need to tell them, Ju-woo whispered. Show them what we found. Do-hyun's colors darkened with doubt. The Elders won't listen. They've hidden this knowledge for generations, and the Confederation only wants the spear's power. Ju-woo clutched her notebook where she'd sketched the stone's markings. Then we need someone who will listen. Ambassador Taeho is angry, but he's not unreasonable. They slipped through the crowd toward the human delegation's position. Captain Minho stood with the other human observers, looking troubled by the escalating conflict. Captain, Ju-woo called. I need to speak with Ambassador Taeho. It's about the spear. We've discovered what it really is. Minho looked at her skeptically. This isn't the time for academic theories, Ju-woo. We're on the brink of a conflict that could damage relations with the Vaxians for centuries. That's exactly why you need to listen, she insisted, showing him her notes and the crystal data storage device Do-hyun had brought. The spear isn't a weapon. It's healing the entire planet, and it might be connected to ancient humans. This caught Minho's attention. After examining their evidence, he reluctantly agreed to arrange a meeting with Taeho. But before they could reach the ambassador, a loud announcement echoed across the grounds. The final extraction attempt will commence, Elder Hyun declared. As agreed in our original terms. After this, the trials end and the spear remains on Vaxis. The crowd turned to see the last champion, a being made of pure energy contained within a specialized suit. The Radiant, as its species was known, approached the stone with confidence. Its energy form could theoretically phase through solid matter, making it ideal for extracting embedded objects. We need to stop this, Do-hyun said urgently. If the Radiant disrupts the energy flow. But there was no time. The Radiant reached the stone and began to glow intensely, its energy field expanding to surround both stone and spear. The ground trembled slightly as the being channeled its full power. For a moment, it seemed like it might succeed where all others had failed. The spear vibrated within the stone, and a collective gasp rose from the crowd. Then, catastrophe. The Radiant's energy field collapsed inward, and the being screamed in pain. It flew backward, its containment suit cracking as it hit the ground. Attendants rushed to stabilize its failing form. The stone defended itself, Elder Hyun announced. As we warned, the trials are concluded. Ambassador Taeho stepped forward, his silver skin now dark with determination. This proves our suspicions. The stone contains defense mechanisms you never disclosed. The Confederation Council has authorized immediate action. Armed forces from multiple species moved forward. The Vaxian elders raised their defensive shields, crystal energy humming through the air. "Stop!" Ju shouted, breaking away from Minho and running toward the center of the confrontation. Her voice was lost in the tension until Do-Yun amplified it through his crystal form, creating a resonance that caught everyone's attention. "The spear is healing your world," Ju called out, standing between the opposing forces. It was placed there by beings called the Forerunners to cure the clouding, a disease that nearly destroyed all Vaxian life. Elder Hyun's colors flashed with alarm. "How do you know this?" "Those records were sealed." "Not well enough," Do-Yun replied, joining Ju. "We found the truth you've been hiding, even from your own people." Ju held up her notebook. "The markings on the stone aren't decorative. They're instructions. The spear wasn't meant to be claimed as a prize. It was a gift from the Forerunners who sacrificed themselves to save the Vaxians." Ambassador Tejo approached cautiously. "What evidence do you have of this claim?" Do-Yun projected images from the crystal storage device, the historical record they had discovered. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the story of the clouding and the Forerunners' sacrifice played out before them. "The spear is still working," Ju explained. "Removing it prematurely could unleash the clouding again, not just on Vaxis, but potentially on any world with crystal-based technology." Elder Hyun's form pulsed with complex emotions. "This knowledge was hidden to protect our people from shame. We were once a proud species who believed we needed no allies. The clouding taught us otherwise. But after we were saved, pride returned. We rewrote our history and nearly caused another disaster," Do-Yun said. "The stone isn't a test of strength, it's a test of understanding." Ambassador Tejo studied the images carefully. "If what you say is true, how do we verify it? How do we know when the healing process is complete?" Ju looked at her sketches again, the pattern suddenly clicking into place. The markings change. "They're not static. They're a progress indicator. Based on my calculations, the process is nearly complete." She stepped closer to the stone, drawn by a sudden intuition. The markings seemed to shift before her eyes, glowing faintly where her shadow fell across them. "Stay back, human," Elder Hyun warned. "The stone's defenses are active." But something strange was happening. As Ju approached, the markings glowed brighter, pulsing in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She looked back at Do-Yun in confusion. "The Forerunners," Do-Yun whispered, his colors brightening with sudden understanding. "They looked like humans. The records show their genetic pattern. It's remarkably similar to yours." The crowd watched in tense silence as Ju took another step toward the stone. The defensive energy that had repelled the radiance seemed to part before her, creating a clear path. "Impossible," Elder Hyun said. "No one can approach the stone when its defenses are active." "Unless," Do-Yun suggested, "she's recognized by the system the Forerunners created." Ju stood before the stone now, close enough to touch it. The markings glowed brightly, forming new patterns that spiraled around the base. "I think," she said slowly, "it's trying to communicate." Following an instinct she couldn't explain, Ju placed her hand on the stone near the spear's base. Immediately, warmth flowed up her arm, and images filled her mind, not just of Vaxis, but of Earth, of ancient humans interacting with crystal beings, of knowledge exchanged and friendships formed across the stars. "The Forerunners were us," she gasped. "Not modern humans, but our ancestors. They traveled the stars long before we remember. They helped the Vaxians, and then they forgot. We forgot." The stone pulsed beneath her hand, and a message formed in her mind. Clear, direct, and unmistakable. The healing was complete. The spear had finished its work. With trembling fingers, Ju reached for the spear's shaft. Unlike the champions who had strained and struggled, she simply placed her hand around it and gave a gentle tug. The spear slid free effortlessly, its metal gleaming as if newly forged. Light cascaded from its tip, flowing across the sacred grounds in waves that touched everyone present. And as the light reached each person, understanding came with it. The true history of Vaxis, the connection between humans and Vaxians, and the sacrifice that had saved the world. The spear wasn't a weapon to be claimed, but a key to forgotten knowledge. And Juwu had turned it, unlocking secrets that would change the galaxy forever. The spear hummed in Juwu's hands, lighter than she expected, yet somehow carrying the weight of ancient history. For a moment, everyone stood frozen. Vaxians, Arthians, humans, and representatives from a dozen other worlds, all watching in stunned silence as light continued to pour from the weapon that wasn't a weapon at all. "What's happening?" Ambassador Tahoe broke the silence, his silver skin reflecting the cascading light. Before Juwu could answer, the sacred stone began to change. She pointed the scepter toward a group of Krell representatives, beings whose tentacled forms and alien mindset had always made them difficult for other species to understand. Immediately, she sensed their complex emotional state, a mixture of philosophical curiosity and practical concern about how these revelations would affect trade agreements. The Krell aren't just worried about power shifts, Juwu explained to the others. They're genuinely interested in the historical implications. They value knowledge as much as resources. The Krell representative's skin flushed purple with surprise. "That is accurate. How can you know this?" "The scepter doesn't just translate languages," Do-Yun said, studying its changing form. "It translates emotional context, the things we can never fully express with words alone." As the day progressed, the transformation of Vaxis continued. Ancient systems buried deep in the planet's crust activated, crystal spires rising from the ground in perfect geometric patterns. The sky, once perpetually clouded, cleared to reveal stars that seemed somehow closer and brighter than before. In the central plaza, Juwu stood with the scepter, helping species who had misunderstood each other for centuries to finally communicate clearly. The Arthians and Vaxians, whose diplomatic relations had been strained for generations, began a genuine dialogue about shared history and future cooperation. "Your people valued efficiency above all," Juwu explained to Ambassador Tahoe, translating the emotional undercurrent from Elder Hyun. To the Vaxians, this seemed cold and mechanical. They feared you would remake worlds in your image without respect for their natural state. "And we found your secrecy arrogant," Tahoe replied, addressing Hyun directly. "We thought you hoarded knowledge out of pride or fear of competition." Both perspectives had truth. Juwu continued, the scepter glowing as it bridged the gap between them. And both were incomplete. By evening, a celebration had begun. Where conflict had seemed inevitable that morning, now representatives from across the Confederation gathered to witness the rebirth of Vaxis. The crystal cities glowed with internal light, more beautiful than they had been for thousands of years. Juwu sat with Do-Yun on a high balcony, watching ships from various worlds landing with scientists, historians, and diplomats eager to understand what had happened. "What will you do with it?" Do-Yun asked, indicating the scepter that now hung at Juwu's side, attached to her belt. "It's possibly the most valuable artifact in the galaxy." Juwu touched it thoughtfully. "I don't think it belongs to me, or to humans, or to any single species. It's a tool for connection, like a universal translator for the heart instead of just words. It belongs to everyone." The Confederation Council is already discussing a new approach to interspecies relations, Do-Yun said. "With the scepter's help, old conflicts might finally be resolved." Below them, in the central plaza, representatives who had never been able to truly understand each other were engaged in deep conversation. The Malorians, with their complex emotional language, were finally able to explain concepts they'd tried to share for centuries. The Dravidians, often perceived as aggressive due to their physical strength, conveyed the deep respect for life that was central to their culture, but difficult to translate. Humans were never the strongest or most advanced species in the Confederation, Juwu observed. But maybe we remembered something others had forgotten: the importance of empathy, of trying to understand different perspectives. That night, as Vaxus's 3 moons rose over the transformed landscape, a formal ceremony was held. The Confederation Council, with representatives from all member species, gathered to establish a new interspecies initiative with the restored Vaxus at its center. Jiwu was asked to demonstrate the scepter's capabilities. As she stood before the assembled diplomats, she felt momentarily overwhelmed. She was a junior researcher who had only wanted to study old stones, and now she held a tool that could change how species interacted across the galaxy. The scepter shows us what we've always known but struggled to practice, she said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. Understanding doesn't come from strength or advanced technology. It comes from truly wanting to connect, from caring enough to see the world through others' eyes. As if responding to her words, the scepter's light expanded, touching each being present and creating a moment of perfect comprehension, a shared experience that transcended the barriers of biology, culture, and history. In that moment, the true gift of the Forerunners became clear. It wasn't the technology of the scepter, impressive as it was. It was the reminder that beneath their different forms and functions, all intelligent beings shared a fundamental desire to be understood. The spear that had been stuck in the sacred stone for thousands of years had finally fulfilled its purpose, not as a weapon to be wielded by the worthy, but as a bridge connecting past to future, species to species, heart to heart. And as the light faded, leaving understanding in its wake, Jiwu knew that a new chapter in galactic history had begun, one written not with weapons or technology, but with something far more powerful: empathy.